She feared the thought of a human mate. Until she finally met him, Zira moved quietly through the polished corridors of the Intari council chambers, her steps echoing softly against the crystalline floors. The light that filtered through the towering windows cast long shadows, painting the walls with a kaleidoscope of colors. Everything about her world was precise, calculated, and orderly, an existence built on rules, logic, and discipline. And yet, despite the perfection that surrounded her, Zira felt a small tremor of unease in her chest, a whisper of doubt she could not ignore. Humans were coming to the planet. She had heard whispers of them for years, tales of unpredictable behavior, chaotic emotions, and strange habits. The Intari believed humans were both fascinating and dangerous, creatures of impulse that could disrupt the careful balance of their society. Zira had been trained her entire life to avoid attachment, especially to humans. Emotional entanglements were considered weakness, distractions that could ruin even the most disciplined mind. Yet now, as the delegation prepared to arrive, Zira could not help but feel a flutter of something unfamiliar. Curiosity, anxiety, perhaps even fear. She paused at the doorway of the observation chamber, watching as the transport ship descended through the atmosphere. Its human design was clumsy compared to the sleek elegance of Intari ships, but there was a certain charm in its rugged functionality. She could see figures moving inside, their gestures loose and unrefined compared to the precise movements of her own people. Her heart beat a little faster. This was real. They were here. Humans. The delegation stepped onto the landing platform, and Zira's eyes focused on one figure in particular. Lieutenant Kale moved with a calm confidence, scanning the environment as if he belonged everywhere and nowhere at the same time. His expression was composed, but his eyes held a spark of curiosity that mirrored her own. Zira immediately felt a pang of something she had been taught to suppress: interest. She turned away, chastising herself. She could not afford distractions. Humans were unpredictable. Humans were dangerous. Humans were not to be trusted. The council had assigned Zira to monitor the humans, to ensure that their presence did not disrupt the fragile equilibrium of the Intari. She was to observe, report, and intervene only if necessary. No interaction beyond what was required. Yet from the moment she saw Kale, she sensed that this rule would be difficult to follow. There was a subtle difference about him, something that set him apart from the other humans. He seemed attentive, aware, and surprisingly considerate, qualities she had not expected from his species. The days passed with a rhythm of observation and restraint. Zira shadowed the humans as they explored the city, noting their reactions to the environment, their mannerisms, and their approach to technology. They were clumsy at first, touching things that were not meant to be touched, asking questions that seemed trivial, yet each misstep revealed a resilience that fascinated her. Unlike the Intari, who followed strict protocols, humans adapted. They learned quickly, found solutions in ways that Zira had never considered. It was both frustrating and captivating. Kale, in particular, seemed to notice her presence more than she liked. Whenever their eyes met, she felt a strange heat in her chest, a pull she could not explain. He asked questions, not intrusive ones, but thoughtful, careful inquiries that revealed his intelligence and respect. He did not judge her or her people. He simply observed and tried to understand. And slowly, despite her fear, Zira found herself answering him, offering small insights and clarifications, even when she told herself she would not. One evening, as the twin suns of the planet dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold, Kale approached her quietly. "You've been watching us for days," he said, his voice calm but curious. "You don't have to hide. I'm not here to harm anyone." Zira stiffened, her instincts screaming caution, but something in his tone made her pause. There was honesty there, a simple truth that she could not dismiss. "I am observing," she replied carefully, keeping her voice neutral. "It is my duty." "I understand," he said, nodding. "But observation doesn't have to be so lonely, does it? You could share what you see, teach me about your world. Maybe we can learn from each other." Her breath caught. Intari were not supposed to speak so freely with humans. It was improper, dangerous even. Yet she felt an unexpected warmth at his words. It was not fear or judgment, but an invitation, a gentle gesture that recognized her value, her intelligence, her presence. For the first time, Zira wondered if humans were truly as chaotic as the legends suggested, or if perhaps there was something deeper to them, something worth understanding. The next day, she allowed herself a small experiment. She led Kale through the council archives, explaining the intricate designs and purposes of Intari technology, the logic behind their decision-making processes, and the philosophies that guided their society. Kale listened with genuine interest, asking questions that pushed her to think in new ways. He did not mock her, did not question her authority. He simply engaged, challenged, and respected. And with each exchange, Zira felt her fear slowly shift into curiosity, a cautious fascination she had never allowed herself to feel before. Yet with every step closer, the shadow of doubt lingered. Her training was clear. Attachment to humans was dangerous. Emotional entanglement could cloud judgment, weaken resolve, and compromise duty. She reminded herself constantly, tightening the invisible chains around her heart. But Kale had a way of making her question those chains without even trying. He treated her as an equal, not as a subject to study or a being to control. And in that treatment, Zira found something she had long denied herself, a sense of freedom. The turning point came unexpectedly. During a routine inspection of the city's outer perimeter, an unforeseen energy surge triggered alarms throughout the council chambers. Security drones activated, and the humans panicked, unsure of the procedures. Zira moved swiftly, guiding them to safety, explaining the protocols with calm authority. Kale followed her instructions without hesitation, his trust in her evident in every action. In that moment, Zira realized something profound. Humans were not inherently dangerous. They could be brave, intelligent, and adaptable, capable of acting with clarity under pressure. And more importantly, they could trust. Kale's trust in her, given so freely, ignited a spark within her that she could not ignore. Fear was still there, yes, but now it was accompanied by admiration, respect, and a strange, compelling pull that made her heart race. As the crisis subsided, the humans returned to the delegation's quarters, grateful and relieved. Zira lingered for a moment, watching Kale assist others with gentle guidance, offering comfort and reassurance. She could not deny the growing admiration she felt. It was dangerous, yes, but it was real. And in the quiet of her mind, she wondered if fear had blinded her all along, preventing her from seeing the true potential of connection. That evening, she sat alone on the observation balcony, gazing at the stars that stretched endlessly above the city. The twin moons cast a soft glow, reflecting in her eyes as she pondered the paradox of her situation. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but they were also resilient, compassionate, and capable of extraordinary courage. And Kale was unlike any human she had ever imagined. His presence challenged her fears, his demeanor questioned her assumptions, and his trust invited her to reconsider everything she had believed about herself and her world. For the first time, Zira allowed herself a single, unguarded thought. Perhaps the fear she had carried all her life was not entirely justified. Perhaps humans were not a threat, but a possibility, a bridge to experiences she had never dared to imagine. And perhaps in that possibility lay the beginnings of something entirely new, something that could change the course of her life forever. As she returned to her quarters that night, Zira felt the stirrings of a change she could neither control nor ignore. Fear still lingered, whispering caution in her mind, but it was no longer the only voice she heard. Curiosity, admiration, and a tentative hope now joined it, weaving a complex tapestry of emotions that both thrilled and unsettled her. Zira knew that the days ahead would test her in ways she had never anticipated. Humans were here to stay, and her role as observer would soon become far more complicated than mere duty. Yet as she lay beneath the soft glow of the chamber lights, she allowed herself a quiet, forbidden thought. Perhaps meeting a human was not something to fear. Perhaps it was something to explore, to understand, and if she dared, to embrace. And somewhere across the city, Kale looked at the stars as well, unaware that he had already begun to change the course of an Intari's life. The next morning, the air on the Intari planet was crisp and clear, the twin suns rising slowly above the horizon, casting long shadows. Across the smooth, polished cityscape, Zira walked through the corridors of the delegation center, her mind still replaying the events of the previous evening. The humans were not what she had expected. Kale, in particular, was unlike anyone she had encountered. His calm demeanor, patience, and subtle understanding had left an impression she could not ignore. She reminded herself repeatedly that she was an Intari first, a guardian of her people's knowledge and values. Humans were unpredictable, yes, and emotions could cloud judgment, but there was something different about Kale. He seemed to think clearly, act responsibly, and yet move with a natural warmth that Zira found both confusing and intriguing. She could not help but observe him as he interacted with others. Kale began the day with his usual calm determination. He guided his team through the city, asking questions about the architecture, the technology, and the cultural practices. His approach was respectful, deliberate, and thoughtful. Zira noted how his presence seemed to encourage cooperation rather than chaos. Humans often acted impulsively, but Kale acted with care. He sought to understand before reacting. And every time their eyes met, Zira felt a jolt of awareness, a reminder that her feelings were beginning to shift in ways she could neither control nor fully understand. During a mid-morning break, Zira found herself alone with Kale in one of the observation halls. The room was filled with holographic displays of the city, charts, and historical records. Zira moved along the panels, pointing out the intricate design of the energy grids and the logic behind the city's layout. She explained the balance between function and beauty that guided Intari architecture, the way every element was calculated to serve a purpose while maintaining harmony with its surroundings. Kale listened intently, his eyes following every movement, his mind clearly processing and appreciating the complexity of her explanations. "It's incredible," he said softly, almost to himself. "Everything is so precise, every choice seems deliberate. It's hard to imagine so much thought and care going into every detail." Zira nodded, her voice steady. "Our civilization is built on logic, discipline, and careful planning. Chaos is not tolerated. Every action, every decision is considered and measured. That is how we survive and thrive." Kale's expression softened, a small smile forming at the corner of his lips. "And yet you seem able to understand the beauty in it, not just the function. That's rare. Most people would only see rules and structure. You see both." Zira paused, her chest tightening. His words were simple, but they carried weight. Few humans or even Intari had ever acknowledged her perspective in such a way. She felt a mixture of pride and unease. Pride because someone recognized her insight. Unease because it made her question the distance she had always maintained from humans. Over the next several days, the humans explored the city and its surroundings under Zira's guidance. She found herself increasingly involved, explaining not only technology and history, but also the philosophy and values that underpinned Intari society. Kale continued to ask thoughtful questions, not to challenge her, but to understand. He wanted to learn, to grow, and his sincerity began to erode the walls Zira had built around her heart. One afternoon, while walking through a courtyard filled with geometric sculptures and soft pools of water, Kale stopped and observed the patterns reflected in the surface. "It's beautiful," he said, "not just the shapes but the way everything interacts. There's a rhythm to it, a harmony. It feels alive." Zira studied him, trying to read his expression. She had expected fascination, curiosity, even amazement, but there was something more, a quiet respect, an acknowledgement of the world she had always known. She felt a pang of something she had never experienced before, a warmth that spread from her chest to her fingertips. "Humans often overlook the details," she said carefully. "You notice more than most, perhaps because you do not live in this structure every day. You see it with fresh eyes." Kale turned toward her, his gaze steady and calm. "Or maybe I'm learning to see the way you see. You notice things that are important, that matter. I want to understand that. I want to understand you." Zira felt her breath catch. The statement was simple, yet it carried a weight that unsettled her. Humans were unpredictable, emotional, and impulsive. She had been trained to avoid attachment, yet here was one, speaking openly, clearly, and honestly, showing interest not in what she could teach him, but in who she was. The following evening, the humans invited Zira to join them for a demonstration of human recreational activities. Zira hesitated, reminding herself that her role was to observe, not participate. Yet curiosity won. She followed them to an open area where humans engaged in physical exercises, team-building games, and discussions that combined strategy with creativity. Kale encouraged her to join a simple exercise, a coordination game requiring both thought and reflex. At first, Zira moved cautiously, her precise training guiding her actions. Kale watched, offering gentle corrections and encouragement. "Relax," he said. It's not about perfection, it's about learning together. Zira felt a strange mix of frustration and exhilaration. Her training demanded flawless execution, yet Kale's words invited flexibility, adaptability, and even imperfection. She realized with a sense of awe that humans thrived in ways the Antari did not. They adapted, learned from mistakes, and grew stronger through experience rather than rigid adherence to rules. As the activity ended, Zira found herself laughing, an involuntary, genuine sound that surprised her. Kale smiled, his eyes reflecting warmth and approval. "See, you're enjoying it," he said softly. "I suppose I am," Zira admitted, a hint of reluctance in her voice. She could not deny the truth, even if it unsettled her. The laughter, the shared experience, the ease with which humans embraced both challenge and failure, it was alien and yet fascinating. Over the next week, Zira and Kale's interactions deepened. They shared long conversations about philosophy, ethics, and the history of both their peoples. Kale spoke of human resilience, creativity, and the bonds that tied them together, even in the face of danger. Zira spoke of Antari logic, discipline, and the delicate balance of their society. Each conversation challenged her assumptions, broadened her perspective, and made her question the fears she had carried all her life. One evening, as they walked through the city gardens, Kale asked a question that caught Zira off guard. "Do you ever wonder if fear holds you back, if it keeps you from experiencing things you might enjoy?" Zira froze, considering her answer. Fear had guided her life, shaped her decisions, and protected her from potential harm. Yet, as she looked at Kale, she realized that fear had also limited her. It had kept her from forming connections, from exploring possibilities, from embracing the unknown. Perhaps, she admitted slowly. Fear is a tool, a guide, but sometimes I wonder if it also cages me. Kale nodded, understanding in his eyes. Cages can be broken. Sometimes it just takes someone to show you the door. Zira felt her chest tighten. The metaphor resonated with her in ways she could not articulate. Kale had become more than an observer, more than a curiosity. He was a catalyst, a presence that challenged her fears and encouraged her to see beyond them. In the following days, the humans faced minor challenges, technical malfunctions, communication errors, and cultural misunderstandings. Each time, Zira guided them patiently, while Kale responded with ingenuity, quick thinking, and an unwavering calm. Their combined efforts impressed her, revealing a partnership of logic and adaptability she had never witnessed. Through it all, Zira noticed a subtle change within herself. She felt a growing admiration for Kale, not just for his intelligence, but for his kindness, patience, and integrity. She found herself anticipating his presence, seeking his perspective, and valuing his insights in ways she had never done with anyone outside the Antari. Fear was still there, yes, but it was accompanied by curiosity, respect, and a quiet, persistent warmth that stirred something deep inside her. One night, as the twin moons bathed the city in soft silver light, Zira found herself alone with Kale once again. They sat on a terrace overlooking the sprawling city, the silence between them comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding. "You've changed the way I see humans," Zira said quietly, almost to herself. "I did not expect this." Kale looked at her, his expression calm and gentle. "And you've changed the way I see Antari. I've learned more from you in these days than I could have imagined. You're brave, thoughtful, and strong in ways I did not expect. I admire you." Zira felt a jolt of something unfamiliar, pride, warmth, and a stirring sense of connection. His words were simple, yet they carried a depth that unsettled her. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but they were also capable of honesty, empathy, and courage. And Kale, above all, embodied these qualities in a way that both challenged and inspired her. As she returned to her quarters that night, Zira reflected on the days that had passed. Her fear of humans had not vanished, but it had transformed. She no longer saw them as threats or anomalies. She saw potential, strength, and the possibility of connection. And in Kale, she recognized a presence that could guide her, challenge her, and perhaps, if she allowed herself, change her life forever. For the first time, Zira allowed herself to hope. Hope that humans were not only worthy of trust, but capable of partnership. Hope that she could embrace new experiences without fear. And hope that, in time, she might discover that the bond forming between her and Kale was not something to be feared, but something to cherish. The days ahead promised challenges, discoveries, and growth. And Zira, for the first time, was ready to face them not with fear, but with curiosity, courage and an open heart the next morning, the calm of the city was shattered by a sudden alarm. Red lights flashed across the delegation center, and automated messages instructed all personnel to evacuate to safety zones. Zira's heart raced, her disciplined mind instantly switching into action. Something had gone wrong, something serious. She moved quickly through the corridors, activating security protocols as she went. The humans, unfamiliar with the system, froze in confusion, their uncertainty amplified by fear. Zira took a deep breath and called out, her voice steady, authoritative. "Follow me. Stay close and do not panic. Trust the instructions." Kale immediately stepped forward, guiding his team while keeping an eye on Zira. His calm presence helped steady the humans, and Zira noticed the way his confidence inspired trust. She felt a small spark of admiration and something more complicated, a warmth that both unsettled and strengthened her. He moved with focus and care, never rushing, never faltering, and Zira realized that this was the human strength she had begun to understand, the ability to act decisively in the face of uncertainty. The source of the alarm became clear as they reached the outer perimeter. A rogue fleet of alien ships, their design unlike anything the Intari had encountered before, was approaching the planet at high speed. Their energy signatures suggested powerful weaponry, and their movements were aggressive and coordinated. Zira's stomach tightened. The delegation was in danger, and the humans she had begun to care for were directly in harm's way. "We need to secure the perimeter and protect the delegation," Zira said, her voice firm but controlled. "Kale, you and your team will assist with evacuation. I will coordinate defenses." Kale nodded, his expression serious. "Understood. We'll follow your lead." The next hours were a blur of activity. Zira and Kale moved together, their coordination seamless. Zira directed defense systems, deploying energy shields and activating countermeasures, while Kale guided humans to safe zones, improvising solutions to unexpected problems. They communicated silently at times, instinctively understanding each other's intentions. During a brief pause, Zira observed Kale as he directed a group of humans through a narrow passage blocked by debris. His movements were precise yet adaptable, and he never hesitated to adjust his plan when the situation demanded it. Zira realized that humans thrived on flexibility, something her people often lacked. The Intari relied on perfection, on pre-planned strategies, but Kale and his team adapted with creativity, learning from each obstacle. She felt a surge of respect for him, mixed with something she did not fully understand. The alien ships began to fire, energy beams striking the city's defenses with destructive force. Zira's mind raced, calculating trajectories and countermeasures. She had trained for this, prepared for threats, but the scale and intensity of the attack tested every skill she possessed. Kale noticed a group of humans trapped near a damaged access point, and without hesitation, he ran to them, lifting debris and guiding them to safety. Zira watched, her chest tightening. His courage was not reckless but deliberate, rooted in concern for others. She had never seen human bravery expressed in such a controlled, intelligent way. As the battle intensified, Zira and Kale found themselves working side by side. They moved through the corridors, clearing obstacles, assisting injured humans, and coordinating defense systems. Each action required trust, reliance on one another's judgment, and rapid decision-making. Zira realized that she had never felt such a connection with anyone before. In the midst of chaos, they had become a team, each complementing the other's strengths. During a particularly dangerous moment, a section of the city's outer wall began to collapse under the alien assault. Zira calculated that the only way to prevent disaster was to manually override the structural controls, a task that required precision and speed. She turned to Kale. "I will need you to hold the control panel steady. Your coordination skills are required." Kale's eyes met hers, steady and unwavering. "I'm with you." Together they worked, their movements synchronized, hearts pounding in unison. Kale's hands were steady, following her instructions without hesitation, and Zira's calculations guided their actions. The wall held, the structure stabilized, and for a moment both allowed themselves a brief exhale. As the battle raged on, Zira began to notice something unexpected. The fear she had carried about humans, the idea that they were unpredictable, dangerous, or weak, was fading. She saw their courage, their adaptability, their willingness to trust and work together. And in Kale, she saw the best of those qualities magnified. He was fearless, compassionate, and intelligent, a combination that both inspired and challenged her. By the end of the day, the rogue fleet was repelled, though the city bore scars from the conflict. Fires burned in controlled zones, and repair teams worked tirelessly to restore essential systems. Zira and Kale stood together on a balcony overlooking the aftermath, their shoulders still tense from exertion. "You handled yourself well," Zira said quietly, her voice carrying a mixture of admiration and something more personal. Kale looked at her, a faint smile on his face, but his eyes held seriousness. "So did you. Without your guidance, we wouldn't have managed this." "You're incredible, Zira." Her chest tightened. She had never been praised in such a personal way, and the acknowledgement of her abilities by someone she respected so deeply stirred emotions she had never allowed herself to feel. Fear was still there, yes, but it was now joined by admiration, trust, and an unspoken connection that neither could ignore. Over the following days, the aftermath of the attack required both species to work closely together. Humans assisted with repairs, learned to operate Intari systems, and adapted to the alien technology left behind. Zira continued to guide them, while Kale demonstrated an innate ability to learn quickly and teach others. Each challenge strengthened their bond, highlighting their complementary strengths. Zira's logic and precision paired perfectly with Kale's adaptability and creativity, and together they solved problems that would have stumped either species alone. Late one evening, Zira and Kale found themselves alone again, reviewing reports and strategizing repairs. The city was quiet, the distant hum of machinery the only sound. Kale glanced at her, a question in his eyes. "Do you ever wonder why humans survive despite all their weaknesses?" Zira considered the question carefully. "We believed humans were chaotic and fragile, but observing you, I see resilience, flexibility, the ability to learn and adapt. That is your strength." Kale nodded slowly. "It's not just that. Humans care. We make mistakes, yes, but we also try. We help each other, and sometimes that makes all the difference." Zira felt a warmth in her chest at his words. The human perspective, so different from her own, revealed possibilities she had never considered. Trust, connection, and care were not weaknesses, they were strengths. And Kale embodied all of them, showing her a way of being that was at once strange, inspiring, and profoundly moving. As the days turned into weeks, the humans began to integrate more fully into the city's routines. Zira found herself seeking Kale's presence, valuing his opinions, and anticipating their interactions. She began to notice small details, the way he listened intently, the subtle encouragement in his words, the calm strength in his actions. And with each observation, the fear she had once carried about humans continued to fade, replaced by respect, trust, and a growing sense of something deeper. One night after the final repairs were completed, Kale and Zira stood on a terrace overlooking the city, the twin moons reflecting softly on the polished surfaces below. The air was cool and quiet, filled with the faint scent of flowering plants. Zira felt a sense of calm she had not experienced before, a quiet confidence born from shared challenges and mutual understanding. "You've changed the way I see humans," Zira said softly, her voice almost lost in the night breeze. Kale smiled gently. "And you've changed the way I see Intari. I've learned so much from you, Zira, not just about your people, but about courage, patience, and the strength of discipline." Zira felt her heart stir. His words were simple, but they carried meaning far beyond the surface. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but they were capable of extraordinary trust, courage, and understanding. And in Kale, she saw the perfect example of those qualities, magnified by intelligence, empathy, and respect. For the first time, Zira allowed herself to feel without fear. She realized that humans were not just worthy of trust, they were capable of partnership, friendship, and perhaps even more. And in Kale's presence, she discovered a possibility she had never dared to imagine, a connection that could bridge the gap between two worlds, two species, and two hearts. The night stretched on, quiet and serene, and Zira felt a sense of clarity she had never known. Fear had guided her life for so long, but it no longer held power over her. She could feel trust, respect, and a tentative hope blooming in its place. And she knew, with certainty, that the days ahead would bring challenges, discoveries, and moments that would test the strength of the bond forming between her and Kale. But for the first time, she welcomed the unknown, knowing that with him by her side, she could face anything. The days following the alien attack were filled with both relief and recovery. The city, though scarred, had endured, and the humans and Intari worked side by side to repair the damage. Zira moved among the teams with purpose, coordinating efforts, solving problems, and ensuring safety. Yet despite the busyness, she found her thoughts frequently drifting to Kale. He had proven himself not only brave but also thoughtful and considerate. During the chaos, his calm guidance had kept the humans safe and even helped the Intari coordinate more efficiently. Zira felt admiration growing into something more profound, something she struggled to define. She had always valued logic over emotion, precision over feeling, yet now she found herself noticing the subtleties of his expressions, the way he interacted with others, and the quiet strength he carried. Kale, for his part, seemed equally aware of her presence. He sought her guidance in small things, often pausing to ask her opinion or to clarify a procedure. His questions were never intrusive, but they revealed a curiosity about her perspective, about how she saw the world. Zira began to notice the ease with which he listened, the patience in his demeanor, and the genuine respect he displayed. These were qualities she had never associated with humans, yet here they were, undeniable and compelling. One afternoon, while overseeing repairs in the city's energy grid, Zira and Kale found themselves working closely together. Sparks flew from malfunctioning circuits, and the air hummed with energy. Kale adjusted a control panel while Zira monitored the system's readings. Their hands occasionally brushed as they reached for tools, and each touch sent a small jolt through Zira's body. She forced herself to focus on the work, reminding herself that emotions could be dangerous. Yet even as she thought this, she could not deny the thrill of connection she felt with him. "Careful with that module," Zira said, her voice steady but tinged with concern. "It's unstable." Kale nodded, his eyes focused. "I've got it, don't worry." Despite his reassurance, Zira felt a surge of protectiveness. She realized that her concern for him had grown beyond simple duty. She wanted him to be safe, not because it was her responsibility, but because she cared. The thought unsettled her, yet it also filled her with a sense of warmth she had rarely experienced. After the repairs were completed, Kale and Zira walked through the city gardens, the soft light of the twin moons reflecting off the polished surfaces and pools of water. The air was filled with the fragrance of flowering plants, and the quiet hum of nature provided a peaceful contrast to the chaos of the previous days. "You've done a lot for us," Kale said quietly, his gaze on the pathways ahead. "Not just protecting the humans, but guiding them, teaching them. You've shown them patience and understanding. I don't think I've ever seen anyone handle things the way you do." Zira's chest tightened. Praise had always been rare for her, especially personal acknowledgement from someone outside the Intari. "It is my duty," she replied, her voice careful. "I act as I must, that is all." Kale glanced at her, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Duty doesn't explain why you stay calm when everyone else panics or why you notice things others miss. You do more than your duty. You make people feel safe, even when danger is all around." Zira felt a warmth spread through her. His words were simple, yet they resonated deeply. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but they were also capable of insight, empathy, and understanding. And Kale, in particular, had a way of seeing her not as a perfect soldier or a representative of her species, but as an individual. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel valued for who she was, not just what she could do. In the following days, Zira began to notice small changes in herself. She looked forward to moments with Kale, not just to guide him or assist him, but to share ideas, observations, and even laughter. They discussed philosophy, ethics, and the history of their respective peoples. Kale spoke of human resilience, creativity, and the bonds that held them together, while Zira explained Intari logic, discipline, and the delicate balance of their society. Each conversation deepened her understanding, not only of humans but also of herself. One evening, as they sat overlooking the city from a high terrace, Kale turned to her. "Do you ever think about what it would be like if humans and Intari worked together more often, not just in emergencies but in everyday life?" Zira considered the question carefully. "It is difficult. Our societies are very different. Trust is not easily given. Differences can lead to misunderstandings." Kale nodded. "True, but I think there's potential. We can learn from each other. We can grow stronger together. You've already shown me that." Zira felt her heart quicken. He had not just acknowledged her abilities, but recognized the value of collaboration between their species. It was an idea she had never considered, and yet it felt right. There was hope in it, a possibility that humans and Intari could find balance, harmony, and mutual respect. And perhaps, she thought quietly, there could be something personal in that as well. Over the next week, Zira and Kale continued their collaboration, working on joint projects to improve the city's defenses and repair damaged systems. They shared strategies, exchanged knowledge, and discovered ways their strengths complemented each other. Zira's precision and logic paired with Kale's adaptability and creativity, producing solutions neither could achieve alone. Each success strengthened their bond, and Zira found herself thinking of him more often, feeling a quiet joy in his presence. One afternoon, a minor malfunction in the city's energy grid forced Zira and Kale into close quarters again. As they worked side by side, their hands brushed repeatedly, each contact sending an involuntary shiver through Zira. She struggled to maintain her composure, reminding herself that emotions could cloud judgment. Yet the warmth she felt in Kale's presence was undeniable, comforting, and strangely exhilarating. "You're tense," Kale observed quietly, his voice gentle. "Relax, we're fine." Zira forced a small smile, feeling her cheeks warm. "I am fine," she replied, though her voice lacked conviction. Kale looked at her with a calm understanding. "You don't have to hide with me, I trust you." The simplicity of his words struck her deeply. Trust was a rare commodity in her life, something that had to be earned through years of demonstration and proof. And yet, Kale offered it freely, without expectation or condition. She felt a rush of gratitude, admiration, and something more, a connection that transcended species, training, and fear. As the evening fell, Zira and Kale walked through the quiet streets, the city bathed in the soft glow of the twin moons. They spoke little, letting the silence convey the understanding between them. Zira reflected on the past weeks, the fear she had carried about humans, the respect she had developed, and now the tentative trust and admiration that had grown into something she could not ignore. She realized that Kale had not only challenged her assumptions about humans, but also about herself. She had begun to understand that emotions, when guided by intelligence and empathy, were not weaknesses but strengths. Fear was no longer the controlling force in her life. Instead, curiosity, trust, and hope were beginning to shape her thoughts and actions. In a quiet moment, Kale turned to her. "You've changed how I see this world, Zira, and you've changed how I see myself. I didn't think humans and Intari could work together so well, but you've shown me it's possible." Zira felt her chest tighten. His words mirrored her own thoughts, and she realized that she too had changed. Her fear of humans had transformed into respect, admiration, and a quiet hope for connection. And in Kale, she saw a partner, someone who understood her, challenged her, and inspired her to grow. The days continued with joint efforts to restore the city and strengthen defenses. Each shared success reinforced the bond between Zira and Kale, and she found herself increasingly aware of the subtle pull she felt toward him. Their partnership was no longer just professional. It had become personal, a connection built on mutual respect, trust, and understanding. One evening, after a long day of work, they sat together on a terrace overlooking the city, the air cool and filled with the soft scent of flowers. Zira turned to Kale, her voice quiet but firm. "I have come to understand humans in a way I did not expect. I see now that fear is not always justified. There is strength in your species, courage and wisdom that can complement my own." Kale smiled, a warmth in his eyes that mirrored her own feelings. "And I have learned that Intari are capable of great depth, precision, and insight. You've taught me more than I could have imagined, Zira, not just about your people, but about myself." For the first time, Zira allowed herself to acknowledge the feelings that had been growing inside her. She admired Kale, trusted him, and felt a connection that transcended logic and fear. Humans were no longer a source of anxiety. They were a source of possibility, companionship, and even inspiration. As they watched the twin moons rise over the city, Zira realized that her life had changed in ways she could never have anticipated. Fear had given way to understanding, admiration had blossomed into trust, and trust had begun to grow into something deeper. A bond that promised not only collaboration between species, but a personal connection she had never dared to imagine. And in that moment, Zira knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them. Not alone, but with Kale by her side as a partner, a guide, and perhaps something more. The city had begun to heal. Repairs were underway, and life was slowly returning to a sense of normalcy. Streets that had once been scarred by the alien attack were now bustling with activity. Humans and Intari worked side by side, their cooperation a testament to the lessons learned during the crisis. Zira moved among them with quiet confidence, observing the progress and ensuring that tasks were carried out efficiently. But more than that, she found herself aware of Kale's presence at nearly every turn. Kale had become an indispensable part of the recovery efforts. His calm leadership, ingenuity, and unwavering respect for the Intari had earned him admiration from both species. Zira watched him guide humans through complex repairs, explain systems they had never encountered, and support those who struggled. Each action revealed his patience, courage, and empathy, and each moment he spent by her side deepened the bond that had been growing between them. Zira had learned much about humans in the weeks since the first encounter, but she had also learned much about herself. She had come to understand that emotions were not weaknesses, but tools that, when paired with logic, could create strength. She felt a quiet pride in her ability to guide, teach, and support, but she also recognized the value of trust, friendship, and connection. Kale had become a mirror in which she could see not only her own strengths, but the possibilities she had once denied herself. One morning, the council called for a joint assembly. Humans and Intari gathered to discuss the future of their cooperation. Zira and Kale walked together toward the central hall, the weight of responsibility and anticipation heavy in the air. Leaders from both species exchanged cautious glances, aware that the events of the past weeks had changed perceptions and relationships. As the assembly began, Zira addressed the gathering. Her voice was clear, measured, and confident. She spoke of the recent crisis, the courage displayed by both species, and the lessons learned. She emphasized the value of cooperation, trust, and understanding. Her words carried weight, not because they were grandiose, but because they reflected truth, experience, and wisdom earned through shared struggle. Kale followed her, speaking of human resilience, adaptability, and the willingness to learn from those around them. He praised the Intari for their discipline, intelligence, and foresight. Together, their message was one of unity, hope, and mutual respect. The assembly listened intently, the tension in the room easing as understanding and admiration replaced skepticism and doubt. After the meeting, Zira and Kale stepped outside into the soft glow of the twin moons. The city sprawled below them, repaired and thriving, a symbol of what cooperation could achieve. Kale turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "We've accomplished a lot together." "But I think this is just the beginning," Zira nodded. "Yes, there is much to learn from each other, much to build, and much to understand." She hesitated, feeling the familiar stirrings of emotion she had come to recognize. "Kale, your presence has changed me. I once feared humans, feared the thought of connection, of trust, but now," her voice softened. "Now I see possibility, strength, hope." Kale reached out, gently taking her hand. "And you've changed me too, Zira. You've shown me discipline, insight, and patience I never knew I could have. I admire you, respect you, and I feel something more. I think we can be stronger together, not just in work, but in life." Zira felt her chest tighten, a mixture of warmth, joy, and anticipation. She had trained herself to avoid attachment, to focus solely on duty, yet here was someone who had earned her trust and admiration, someone whose presence brought comfort and courage. She allowed herself to take his hand fully, feeling the connection and strength it provided. In the days that followed, Zira and Kale worked not only to repair the city, but also to strengthen the bonds between their peoples. They organized joint projects, shared knowledge, and encouraged collaboration. Humans learned to operate Intari systems with guidance, while Intari adapted to new perspectives and approaches offered by the humans. Through shared experience, mutual respect grew into friendship, and friendship began to blossom into something deeper. Zira noticed the subtle changes in herself. She felt joy in Kale's presence, anticipation for their interactions, and a quiet sense of belonging she had never experienced. Her fear of attachment had transformed into trust, admiration, and a willingness to embrace the unknown. Kale, too, showed signs of the bond he felt, often seeking her guidance, valuing her opinions, and expressing his thoughts and feelings openly. One evening, after a long day of joint projects, Zira and Kale stood together on a high terrace overlooking the city. The twin moons cast silver light across the polished surfaces, illuminating the water features and gardens below. The air was cool and filled with the faint scent of flowering plants. They were quiet at first, simply observing the city they had helped rebuild and the people working together to restore normalcy. Zira finally spoke, her voice soft but steady. "Kale, I have come to understand humans in a way I never imagined. I see courage, intelligence, and compassion, and I see you. Your presence has shown me that connection is not weakness but strength." Kale smiled, taking her hand in both of his. "And I see you, Zira. Not just as a guide or a leader, but as someone I respect, admire, and care for deeply. You've changed the way I see the world and the way I see myself. I want to continue this journey with you together." Zira felt her heart swell with a mixture of joy, relief, and hope. She realized that fear had once governed her thoughts, but now she was free to embrace connection, to trust, and to care. The bond she and Kale shared was no longer uncertain. It was real, mutual, and full of potential. The weeks that followed were filled with collaboration, discovery, and the gradual integration of humans and Intari into each other's lives. Training programs were established, cultural exchanges were encouraged, and joint ventures flourished. The city thrived, not just as a repaired structure, but as a living symbol of unity and possibility. Zira and Kale continued to work closely together, their partnership strengthened by shared experience and mutual respect. They faced challenges, of course, technical difficulties, cultural misunderstandings, and occasional conflicts. But each obstacle was met with patience, communication, and cooperation. Through it all, their bond grew stronger, deeper, and more resilient. One night, as the twin moons reflected on the city below, Zira turned to Kale with a quiet smile. "We've come far," she said. "Not just in repairing the city, but in understanding each other. I never imagined humans could be so capable, so courageous, and so wise." Kale laughed softly, a sound that warmed her heart. "And I never imagined Intari could be so insightful, disciplined, and inspiring. You've shown me more than I could have hoped to learn." They stood together in silence, their hands entwined, the city below a testament to their efforts. Zira felt a deep sense of fulfillment, not just in their accomplishments, but in the connection she shared with Kale. Fear had been replaced by trust, admiration, and love, a combination she had once thought impossible. As the days turned into weeks and months, humans and Intari continued to learn from one another. New projects were launched, cultural exchanges became commonplace, and friendships blossomed across species. The city, once scarred by conflict, now thrived as a symbol of cooperation, understanding, and hope. Zira and Kale's partnership became a model for others. They demonstrated that strength came not from isolation or fear, but from trust, collaboration, and mutual respect. Their bond inspired others to look beyond prejudice, to embrace new perspectives, and to find courage in connection. One evening, after a particularly successful joint project, Kale and Zira found themselves alone on a terrace, watching the twin moons rise. Zira turned to him, her voice filled with quiet certainty. "Kale, I fear no longer governs me. I see now that connection, trust, and understanding are the true strengths of both our peoples, and I see that, together, we can face anything." Kale smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "And I feel the same, Zira. Together we are stronger, wiser, and more capable. And I look forward to every day we spend learning, growing, and building a future together." Zira felt her heart lift, a warmth spreading through her chest that was both comforting and exhilarating. The journey from fear to trust, from doubt to admiration, had been long and challenging, but the reward was undeniable. She had discovered not only the strength and potential of humans, but also the capacity for connection, love, and partnership within herself. As they stood together, watching the city below, Zira realized that the bond she shared with Kale was more than personal. It was a symbol of what was possible when fear was replaced by understanding, when prejudice was replaced by trust, and when two worlds chose to embrace each other rather than resist. The stars above sparkled like diamonds, reflecting the promise of new beginnings. And Zira, standing hand in hand with Kale, felt a quiet certainty. The future was bright, full of possibility, and shared with someone who understood her, respected her, and inspired her to be her best self. And in that moment, she knew that fear had no power over her anymore. Only hope, trust, and the promise of a future built together remained.